Thank you all for joining Darien Library this evening for Cut the Cord with Jim Gifford. Jim's a writer, editor, and publisher for over 30 years experience in the tech and the telecommunications industry, where he's consulted on consumer issues. A former Toland, Connecticut resident, Jim joins us this evening from his new home in Colorado. Before we begin, I'd like to mention that programs at Darien Library are made possible by the annual Friends of the Library campaign. We thank you for your support to make programs like this, as well as our collections, available to the community. I hope everyone's ready to learn about how we can tell the cable company to take a hike. And I'm now going to pass the mic over to Jim.
Hi, thanks very much. Welcome, everybody. This is a talk that I first gave when I moved to Holland in 2010, and I was involved in the community quite a bit, and I was on the library board and things. And in late 2016, I suggested to the librarian that this would make a great topic. I forget why it was very hot right at that moment, and she thought it was a good idea. So we booked it for, I think, 65 people and had a waiting list almost as long. So we ended up doing another session 2 weeks later with another 65 people. And she put it out on what I call the Secret Librarian Network, and I started getting calls from the other towns and libraries. And before I was done in the fall of 2017, I'd done this presentation about 30 times and enjoyed every one of them. I covered literally every corner of the state. And then, of course, when I relocated to Colorado for complicated reasons in the fall of 2017, and I was still getting requests to do this, and I always had to reply, well, I hope you have the airfare available, which was never in their budget. And then in about October, November, a librarian, I can't remember which town she was from, said, well, you know, we do this on Zoom now. So here I am with a completely revised version of an updated version of the presentation. This is the fourth or fifth one I've given so far, and the list keeps growing. I'll be doing this probably for the rest of my life. So anyway, I'm glad to be in Darien tonight. This is Cut the Cord. The concept is how to get rid of your tie to the cable company and replace it with the more modern idea of streaming. We'll cover it in a few sections. It takes about an hour. So if you have questions as you go, you can type questions into chat, and I'm looking at it. I can answer things on the fly. If it's something I'll cover later, I'll ignore it until later. And then I'm good for Q&A at the end, pretty much as long as anybody cares to have any questions. So let me switch over to the actual presentation here. That would help. Anyway, what does this presentation cover? It's the technical basics of how to find and view streaming content. That's actually the simple part, and really anyone can do it. The various types of streaming content and where to find it, what to go look for, how to find it, what you might want to search for. And an important thing is how to get control of your cable services and costs and your privacy. This is not about bargains. I don't have a long lecture about how to, tell you to argue the cable company into giving you a discount or free HBO for a year. Bargains are kind of the wrong direction to go with this. You want to move it so you have control of your cable service and your entertainment service, which you don't. Cable, of course, they change the channels, they change the packages, they change the pricing, and all you can do is be dragged along with it. There's a better model. That's what I'm going to talk about. And as I said, this is takes about an hour, and I will try to answer questions on each section as we go along, and then Q&A. Consumer issues are not a small part of this. I talk about more than the tech and the channels. What I've done for the last few years is written about consumer rights, and entertainment is a consumer commodity. We're entitled to a better deal than just what they choose to charge us and what they choose to pay or choose to provide. And we're also entitled to privacy. Privacy has become a very big issue with this. If you have anything like Alexa or Siri or any of the things that listen to you and bring you wonderful things from Amazon, first of all, you might want to think about that. There's serious privacy issues. And now that they've integrated it with entertainment, so you can sit on the couch and simply say, hey, Alexa, show me a Jerry Lewis movie. That means Alexa's listening all the time. You might want to think about that. And I don't think that entertainment should be used as a carrot to allow them to invade our homes further. I won't go too much into that, but it is a part of this. That's me. I'm basically, as she said, I'm a writer, editor, and publisher. I've worked mostly in and around the tech industry for a long time, mostly with consumer and business electronics. I was part of the field that developed modern intelligent telephony, voicemail, auto routing, all that kind of thing. So you can blame me, throw things at the screen if you like. That did teach me a great deal about making technology accessible to people. Also, these days I'm a writer on consumer issues. That's my website. If you're interested in a rather radical interpretation of what it means to be a consumer these days, there's some essays there you may find interesting. And I am an independent speaker. I'm not representing any company. I'm not on anybody's payroll. I do recommend a few things enthusiastically because I've found them to be very good values, to be very good choices. But I have no stake in this whatsoever. In fact, for the first time about 2 weeks ago, I was contacted by a provider in Connecticut who wanted to get me onto a half-hour Zoom intense sales session so that I would say glowing things about them, and I had to say no, I don't do that. I'm not gonna say who it is, but they're around. I cut the cable probably over 10 years ago. I got tired of the games, and at that time it took more technical knowledge to actually do streaming, but I did it, and pardon me, my family was happy with it, I was happy with it, and it's only gotten better. Questions, this is more for the live sessions. The live sessions would tend to get interrupted by questions, and we'd wander off down all kinds of interesting roads, but it would make it very slow. Feel free to type questions into the Q&A as you go, anything that occurs to you. If it's relevant to what I'm talking about, I'll answer it. If not, I'll try to get to it later. A lot of things people ask questions about are things that I get to later in the presentation. So, go right ahead. And there's a lot of things like URLs and business names and things that I reference. You don't have to frantically write them down and take notes. Everything is on that website, nitropress.com/CTC. That page has everything I'm talking about as far as the URLs, the companies. There's a very long, complicated FCC site that I recommend you visit. You don't have to frantically write them down. They're all there for you to go look up. So let's start with some basic terms and concepts, just to make sure we're all on the same thing, on the same page. Some of the early presentations, I'd get halfway through it, and someone would want to go, "What exactly is Wi-Fi?" So even if you know, let me just go through the basics so that we're all talking about the same thing. The internet is the whole global network that connects everything. We're kind of stuck with it, and it's more or less the wired service that comes to your house. There are some other variations. Some people might have satellite service, some people might have other variations, but basically it's the wired connection out to the world. Wi-Fi is an optional wireless network, usually within your home or business. There is public Wi-Fi that covers bigger areas. It's becoming a bigger and bigger deal, but generally Wi-Fi is something that uses the internet to allow local connections. It's not a substitute for internet in general. Streaming is all audio and video entertainment from the internet, and it has the name has already become a little bit outdated very quickly. If you have been on computers for a while, you remember when you had to download an entire file. You had to spend 15 minutes downloading the file so that you could then play the 3-minute cat video on your computer or whatever. Somebody figured out or brought existing technology so that they could sort of send the file about as fast as you were looking at it. If it was a 10 meg file, you only a little bit of it had to download, and you could start watching it, and then more and more and more of it would be coming in as you're watching it. That's the way it all works now. But the technical term was that you were streaming the video file down to the user. That's why it's called streaming. It's become as obsolete as the notion of dialing a phone, but that's what we call it. When I use the term cable, I don't mean everything that a cable company does. They provide a lot of services these days. They become very broad providers. When I say streaming versus cable, I mean cable TV, the basic thing we think about, the video services, the channels, not the entire spectrum of things. So some people got confused by that. I'd say, this versus that versus cable, and they go, but what about, broadband? What about security services? That's not what I mean. I just mean just plain old cable TV. So cable, since we're talking about it, what do we get from it? Television channels, lots and lots of television channels of all kinds. Some are cable, some are local, some are pay-per-view. There's now on-demand channels that have been for several years. Of course, almost all of you get your broadband, your internet connectivity from it. If you have a landline phone, actually, Connecticut small towns was one of the last places I found folks who still had old AT&T copper wire phones because of course they are about as reliable as an engine block. They even in storms and stuff, they tend to stay up, which is a very valuable thing. But in general, if you have a landline, particularly in a town, you probably have it through the cable company. It's probably what's called a digital phone, or the technical term is VoIP, which is voice over IP, which is the technology of the net. You technical, don't worry about it. And increasingly, cable companies have started getting into the security and smart home features. If you put in like an entire, set of Ring devices or whatever, they're all connected, and they will provide the all the connectivity and allow you to get to it from other locations and stuff. They're big on that because it uses very little, it's very little cost to them, and it's very, very profitable. As for content, the old joke, 500 channels and nothing to watch. And that's the way they sell it to you. You can't do it one channel at a time. You can't do it one package at a time. If you have, the most basic cable tier, it probably doesn't have the channels you want. You have to add a whole package to get 1 or 2 channels for your kids. You have to add another whole package to get 1 or 2 sports channels. You have to add a whole package to get 1 or 2 movies. And they structure it so that you have to pay the absolute maximum to get the 10 channels you actually want to watch. Nonsense. So why do we pay that? I started off as what do we pay, but we already know what we pay. Why do we pay this? Why do we, the costs are semi-regulated. Cable companies are a public utility generally, so because they have to go in and build an infrastructure, they negotiate it town by town, and it's a balance between them as a provider and being a public utility that has to answer to greater authorities. But the way they structure the rates, if you ever looked at your cable bill, maybe you haven't. Maybe all you've done is looked at the top number and paid it for a long time. But if you ever dig in, there's line after line after line after line of costs, and there's this cost and this tier and that, and then there's usually a section for government fees and regulations, or government fees and surcharges, which really are pretty modest. They're things like the E911 fee for 911 service. They're modest FCC fees, but a lot of times bundled in there's something like line fee or service fee or something, and they bundle it in to make you yell at the government about it because they're charging you money, but it's not the government, it's actually the company. It's Charter, it's Cox, it's Comcast, simply tacking on a $5 or $10 or $15 charge every month for things they can't otherwise charge for. So they're kind of nickel and diming you, and it's bigger than nickel and dimes. If you have their equipment, you probably pay a rental fee on it, whether it's the cable box, if you have a DVR, if you have TiVo, which to me has always been one of the great scams, paying a rather substantial amount to be allowed to tune your TV. If you have internet gear, you're probably paying $5 or $10 a month for it. And something that doesn't apply as much anymore, probably not many of you have the old cable boxes, the ones about the size of VCR. You might remember that those got quite hot. And if you had a DVR, you could probably cook eggs on the top of it. That's because they were tremendously power efficient. They drew 150, 200 watts, and they drew it 24/7, 365. Why? Because it was a very old equipment. It was equipment designed in the 70s. Why didn't they give newer equipment? Because this stuff was cheaper. They're giving it to you free, so it didn't matter to them that you were paying $10 or $15 a month just to keep it powered. And you couldn't even turn it off, because if you turn it off, it could take an hour to reload all the cable channels. So you were kind of hit coming and going. Most of you probably now have the smaller boxes, the box about the size of a paperback book, and it doesn't draw as much power anymore. But it took a long time to get to those more efficient boxes. And why should we put up with pricing like this? And the answer is we shouldn't. And cable people are fleeing cable companies left and right. It was a flood back in 2016-17. It is to the point now where the cable companies are mostly actively panicking because they are losing so many customers who no longer want to pay this inflated, obscure amount of money for the services that they feel like providing. So here we are. So how do you get rid of cable in Connecticut? And unfortunately, the answer is that you probably can't, because broadband rollouts and wiring, things like that, are town by town. They were negotiated over the last 50 or 60 years. There isn't any physical, there aren't like 2 cable companies in most companies, in most towns. At best, there were changing rules allowed them to share it, where one cable rollout, one physical rollout could be shared by multiple companies, but not on very good terms. So the way to do it is to beat it into submission. And you can do that with what I call ITV, which is internet TV or independent TV. And generally, it's far more inexpensive TV. It all starts with internet streaming. The costs are lower. The costs can be free. You can basically have almost everything you're getting on cable for free. Not necessarily premium channels. You don't get HBO. You won't get the Game of Thrones sequel movie or the prequel that they're working on. I can't believe that one. But basically, you can get a tremendous amount of stuff free. And the way to think about it is that your internet cost is not part of cable anymore. It used to be, but now really it's a household utility. It's like electric, it's like gas, it's like oil, it's like other phone service. It's a service that feeds many things. So you have to divorce it from your notion that it comes from cable. Cable isn't good for anything else. All you can do is watch the channels they provide you. You can't mow the lawn with it. You can't cook dinner with it. You can't pet the dog with it. All you can do is watch TV. But internet, of course, is an incredibly useful resource for many things. So if you think of that as a utility, streaming just becomes one thing you use it for. So the costs become zero for that part of it. And power costs are minimal. Most internet equipment uses very little power. It probably doesn't cost $10 a year power at all. It brings cost control because you can pay for only what you want to watch. You don't have to subscribe to 500 channels. You don't have to have 2 or 3 packages. You don't have to have all kinds of stuff you will never watch and pay for it month after month after month. You can watch only what you want and pay for only what you want. Most of the services that you pay for are on month-to-month contracts. You can turn them on and off. Services like Netflix actually used to have a suspend option where they knew people didn't watch as much during the summer, so you could go in and basically turn off your service with no charges for 2 months or 3 months, and then it would automatically start back up. And it would still be your same account. You wouldn't have to go restart it. You would have to tell it all your channels. Most of them don't do that anymore. It was a little too friendly of them, so now they don't have that. But you can turn the contracts on and off. You aren't bound for a year. You aren't bound like cable, where you get teaser rates for 3 months, and then you pay a fortune for 9 more months, and then you start the whole process over again. Pay-per-view is exactly that. A lot of the particularly movies, premium stuff, you pay for what you watch. You want to watch a movie, it costs you $3 or $4. If you don't watch any movies, it costs you nothing. You don't have to pay $20 a month for HBO for movies you never watch. And an important thing is this can supplement cable. Let's get a little more into that when we talk about the hardware and stuff. You don't have to completely switch over. You can add streaming to the mix and see if you like it and make it work for you, and then and keep cable. I do recommend. I have a kind of a protocol that I recommend you follow, summarized as: if you put in streaming, pretend you don't have cable. Don't just keep watching cable and occasionally glance at Netflix or one of the other services. Put the effort into finding all of your channels and all the services on streaming, and go to cable only when it's something you really want to watch right that minute and you haven't found a substitute for. Move away from cable. Get used to not having it. Makes it much easier to cut it off. So it's better TV in besides financial reasons, because you choose what you want and watch when you watch it. You don't have to have these sort of endless streams that you're paying a fortune for that you never watch. You simply watch. You go find what you want to watch it, and that's all there is to it. It's very simple. It also makes it a little easier to watch less. Instead of simply sitting down in front of a channel and letting it run for several hours and then getting up and going, gosh, I should have gotten up and done something an hour ago. You kind of have to pick and choose. You have to pick each program you're going to watch. And at that point, I mean, you're perfectly free to sit and watch for 6 hours if you want, but you're probably going to watch 1 or 2 programs and get up and find something else to do. And the consumer part of me thinks that's a better plan. There is no recording. You don't have to record anything. You don't have to have a DVR. You don't have to have a TiVo. Everything on the biggest model of streaming is already recorded for you. It's like Netflix. If you use it, you simply go in, you pick what you want to watch. You start it, you stop it, you rewind it, you turn it off, you come back to it later, you rewatch it later. It's as if everything is already recorded for you. So you don't have to ever remember to record something. You don't run out of space. You don't have to delete your entire Gilligan's Island collection to make room for the next thing you want to watch. It's all just out there for you, waiting to be watched. In 2016-17, the choices were wide, but did not match cable. But now it's I suspect that the choices are actually, in general, wider than cable. Not every single thing that a cable channel brings you, especially the premium channels, is out there, but the overall selection of what's available is enormous. If you can't find everything you're looking for, you haven't looked hard enough. It's that simple. And the nice thing is you can have zero commercials. And again, the consumer advocate part of me thinks that's absolutely wonderful. You can basically never see another television commercial again as long as you live. Even the channels that are commercial driven tend to run. It tends to be a little less obnoxious because, frankly, they found another trick that works better for this. But you can greatly reduce or completely wipe out the commercials you watch on streaming. So let's take a quick side thing here, though. The one thing that a lot of people have forgotten about is plain old over-the-air OTA broadcast, what we used to just call regular old TV. When it went to cable, when the cable channels started carrying it, particularly in the towns that didn't have good reception, people kind of forgot about broadcast TV. And about 20 years ago, they completely revamped it technically. They went to digital TV, and it's immensely better than it was in the analog broadcast days. Pardon me. For one thing, over-the-air TV is true HD. If you're getting local channels on cable, it's compressed. It's reduced in quality. Like if you watch something and there's a beautiful sunrise and it's sort of broken into bands, that's called banding or posterization. It's because they're reducing the quality of the signal. If you watch it over the air, you get true HD as if you're watching it from a Blu-ray disc. Most of the channels are full true HD. The quality is much better. Even if you're watching a dumb sitcom, you may as well watch it in better quality. Also, each channel has up to 3 channels behind it. If you have local channel 15, you have channel 15-1, 15-2, and 15-3. And the way it typically works is 15-1 is the main ABC affiliate. That the main things that you would watch on an ABC station. 15.2 is maybe also ABC, but it runs secondary programs. It runs reruns from the daytime. It runs programs they don't put on national broadcast. And 15.3 maybe licensed out to yet another shopping channel or a foreign language channel or an educational channel or sometimes almost complete junk. But if you have 10 digital channels available, it means you have around 30 actual channels available. Sometimes I don't put any time into this. I just gave a talk for a town up near Litchfield, and I ran the check, and they had absolutely no television reception there. There was no point in talking about it because putting up an antenna would do absolutely no good. You folks are lucky. If you look over on the right, basically, I'm sorry, I used to have a local Connecticut one. That's here in Aurora. I'm in the town next to Denver. And here, basically on the flatlands of the big city, I get a huge number of channels. I have one antenna that's in the peak of my garage inside, and I get probably 40 different channels. I just watched the inauguration this morning on live HDTV. It was very nice. The comparison, of course, the one I leave up there is the one for Tolland. Tolland is kind of sits in the hills and valleys, and if you sit on a very, very high ridge, you might get 1 or 2 TV channels. The town of Litchfield got none. You folks are incredibly lucky. I ran it because you're there on the flats, more or less by the shore. You get nearly all of the New York channels. Looking into if you don't have a TV antenna, if you don't have an OTA antenna, and you want to get rid of cable, it's incredibly worth the investment of putting up an antenna and connecting it to your TV. You will get a huge number of channels. And the way you find out what you get is you go to this FCC site that's on the bottom there. And like I said, that's one you don't have to write down. It's very complicated, but it's on my website. And it's a site that takes the FCC knowledge, their knowledge of all the TV stations, and it also involves, it integrates like a topographical map. And you can enter things down to your local address. So if you sit up on a ridge, it will give you a different answer, many more channels than your neighbor who's way down in a hollow and probably can't get any channels. So what I'm going to do here is let me go to the next page here first. These are what the antennas look like. TV is line of sight only. It does not bend. It doesn't reflect. You used to be able to watch skip stations that were way out of range, but that was a very complex atmospheric thing where it would bounce off high level of the atmosphere and come to you, and it wasn't reliable. In general, your antenna has to be able to see the antenna broadcasting tower. If you can't see it because of a mountain or because it's below the curve, you're not going to get it. But these are the antennas that work. The one on the left is small enough you can put it on your living room wall, and your signal strengths are powerful enough. It probably will work well for you. The one in the middle is the one I have. It's mid-size. That's about 3 feet high. I have it stuck in the peak of my garage, and it brings me 40 channels. If you look at the diagram there on the left, that's kind of what I've got. Nearly all the stations are to the west of me. There's 2 or 3 that are almost north. I don't get those very well. If I wanted to, I would use an antenna that's like the one on the right, which has 2 planes. You point one in one direction and it bends in the middle, and you point the other one at the other ones. Or you can use 2 antennas. But anyway, you do get incredibly good reception. So let's go over here. I'm going to switch over to the other display here. There we go. Okay, you should be seeing my browser now. And I'm going to go, this is the FCC site. And all of you should go to this and enter your own address because it will give you slightly different answers depending on exactly where you're located within the area and your elevation and so forth. So I'm just going to go ahead and enter the zip code, 06820. I'm pretty sure that's correct.
Yep.
And here's what we get. You guys get almost as many channels as I get here in the flat Midwest. Every one of those green channels has 3 channels to it. So if you put up a modest antenna, you should be able to get most of them. The only thing you don't seem to have is an NBC affiliate that's available. But all of those, if I were to click on those, nearly all of those are coming from the New York direction. So you have not only local, you have the really big affiliates out of the city. So very, very worth doing. That's actually surprising. Most Connecticut towns don't have the option to make it even worth talking about this at any length, but you do. It's worth doing. So, on back to where I left off. Okay, so let's talk about the technical basics of what it takes to do streaming. We assume that you've already put in an OTA antenna and are enjoying that, but now let's look at internet streaming. The technical basics are actually very easy. If you can hook up a VCR, and I'm talking new style with 1 cable, not the old days where you had 10 cables and they all looked alike. It's very, very easy. I say for ITV on your couch, and that's because I'm assuming that most of you want to replace the cable experience. You want to flop down on the couch, pick up a remote, and watch TV. Streaming can be done on almost any device, and I'll talk about this more. You can watch half a movie on your big screen and go upstairs and curl up in bed with your tablet and keep watching the same movie. It works on any device that connects to the internet. But generally, I'm going to be talking about the couch experience. Just don't keep in mind that that's only one part of this experience. You can take this with you anywhere you go, anywhere your devices go. The primary thing you need is good internet service. And we'll talk about what constitutes good internet service, but if you don't have internet service, you can't get any of this. The only thing you can get is over the air, which honestly may be enough for some people, and that is truly free. You need a TV with an HDMI port. That's the sort of big D-shaped connection that's on almost every TV from the last 15 years. Those of you who are going, oh my God, that's scary. No, it's not. It's actually very easy. It's one connection that does everything. Instead of the days where you had to run, like I said, 5 or 6 cables and all the connectors looked alike and you could get them wrong, this is very simple. You take one cable, you plug it into the streaming box. You take the other end of the cable, you plug it into your TV, and you're done. It's video, it's audio, it's control, it's power, it's everything. It's very, very simple. So even if you have never done anything like that, you should be able to do it easily on your own. You need a streaming to video device, which can be, as I said, it can be a tablet, a laptop, a desktop computer, most smartphones, any device that can connect to the internet and show video can be used as a streaming device. But what you really want is some kind of dedicated device. And there are, we'll talk about some of the other ones, smart TVs, disc players, game consoles can all do it. What you really want is a dedicated streaming appliance, a little box that does nothing else. It makes it a very, very smooth, very seamless, very easy process, much like watching cable. And I had to add this one after a couple of sessions. You do need a credit card. Not for all of the free services. Obviously, there's nothing there. But if you want to subscribe to Netflix, Hulu, HBO, those, they don't have any billing system. You have to have a credit card that they can bill you through. A few of them may take something like PayPal. this came up. I'd get all the way through one of the earlier presentations, and someone would say, "Well, I don't have a credit card. How do I get Netflix?" And I had to back up and say, "Well, you can't." So I bring this up early on just to make sure that everybody knows that. Okay, some scary curves ahead. I have to talk about really technical stuff here for about 3 slides. Basically, the fundamentals of getting good internet. If this is just complete gibberish to you, that's fine. Don't worry about it. It's not essential. Somebody needs to know this and get you solid internet service, whether it's a friend, a relative, your 13-year-old nephew, someone you pay to come do it, or a lot of times the providers will do it for you. But I do want to cover it for the people that do understand the equipment and the issues. I'll try to make this short, but don't be scared off by this if it's way over your interest level. Again, internet is the wired network service that comes to your house. They control it. They control every technical aspect of it. As long as network neutrality holds, they don't control the content of the use of it. It's like, the power company doesn't tell you what you can do with the electricity. The fuel oil company doesn't tell you, what you can do with it. And at least so far, I think we've crossed the desert here now. There was a push for a while by the big companies who wanted to control what you could see across their internet. Comcast wanted to limit you only to Comcast approved services. And it all goes back to a very old, very insightful FCC ruling in the 1940s. The FCC said you could not sell a TV that did not tune all channels. And if you think about it, if in 1950 you could buy a TV very cheaply that only tuned the NBC network, or only tuned CBS, and then later only tuned ABC, they would have sold a lot of them, especially if they were subsidized and sold at a loss leader, where you would only receive that one channel. So the FCC's ruling that all TVs had to bring in all channels was foundational for everybody having choice. That's what network neutrality is basically that if you have an internet connection, you can connect to anything else on the internet without them interfering. You can't only connect to Comcast video service or Google's search service. You can go anywhere. Internet, they control it. They control it technically, but at least so far they can't control the content and the use of it. That comes through a modem and a router, which gives you your local network inside your house. That's what you connect everything to, whether with wires, which is the best way to do it, or with Wi-Fi. If you have Wi-Fi, that piggybacks on that and turns your local network into wireless signals that can come to your phone, to your tablet, to computers you don't want to run wires to. Good Wi-Fi is an asset. If you don't have Wi-Fi, you may want to consider installing it as part of this process so that you can use phones and tablets and things without using network data. Even if you have nominally unlimited data, Wi-Fi is much faster and doesn't, you can reduce your data plan to something much smaller because you're pulling most of your data through basically a free connection instead of for a paid connection. Wired connectivity is much better for video. All of the streaming devices, most smart TVs will work on Wi-Fi. So you can have your Wi-Fi hub somewhere back by the garage where the wires come in, and your TV in the living room, and they'll connect wirelessly. I got tired of all the problems of that many years ago. You sit down to watch something and it needs a password, or it needs to be updated, or it needs the configuration changed, or something. If you take the trouble to run a wire from wherever your internet service comes in, wherever your main video stack is, it will pay off in year after year of utterly reliable service. All you'll ever have to do is dust the cable occasionally. You will never sit down and want to watch something and have to spend 15 minutes booting around, getting the Wi-Fi to talk to itself again. That's worth a lot to me. It's worth a lot of effort. And particularly houses in Connecticut with basements, it's very easy to run wiring. I love that. I came from California originally, where most houses are on slabs. Running wiring was very difficult. Got my house in Tolland, and the basement was like putting the house up on a lift. I could run wires anywhere I wanted. It's actually very easy. So basically, a lot of quality streaming depends on your net provider. And if you are mostly influenced by the advertising of the broadband companies, you probably don't have a very clear picture of what they're providing. You want high reliability. You don't want a flaky company, pardon me, that has, you know, they go out for an hour once a week, or there's a little 5-minute dropout every evening. That just becomes very annoying very fast. You want very, very high reliability. Most of them are nearly 100%. They're 99.999% uptime. That's very good. The critical thing you want from a provider, though, is what's called low ping, low lag. You want your system to talk to their system very, very fast. And it's not a matter of the speed of the data, it's how fast their system responds. Think of a web page where you click on a button and a page comes up. You click on a button and a page comes up. And you've had the experience where you click on something and nothing happens for a while, and then the page comes up. That's lag. It's taking a long time for your request to get to the server and then be processed. The page may come down very, very fast once the request has been processed, but it's that delay that gets very, very irritating. It's actually almost more okay for a page to come in a little slowly, as long as it comes as soon as you call it. But when you click and then it comes down, that's low lag. Lag will just mess up everything. It'll mess up games, it'll mess up video, it'll mess up Skyping with your grandmother, everything. So you want low lag. What you don't need is speed. Speed is enormously oversold. We'll talk about that in a minute. Moderate speeds in the 25 to 40 or 50 range are more than any household needs. You don't need anything faster at all. And then, of course, you want the lowest cost. Once you've looked at the providers that are available, once you've kind of looked at these other characteristics, whoever provides all of that for the lowest cost is obviously your best bargain. So to choose a provider, you look at all providers that service your location, which is difficult. It's like one of the things that annoyed me in living in Connecticut was trying to get competitive prices on fuel oil. You can't. There is no central bureau. You just have to call them all, and there's a few websites that try to do it for you, but it never turns out to have all the details. Broadband is a little bit like that. There is no central authority. You just have to call them, and a lot of times put up with even if you go to the website, it says that you have to call and get on a chat with somebody, and you have to be heavily sold to get the simple information of how much it costs. There is a service that I'm going to jump to in a second that will tell you, but it's hard. It's harder to get than it should be. So you basically choose the best based on that. The one thing you don't have to worry about is how many cable channels they have. You can move away from your cable company to a provider you never would have considered before, because they either have only a few cable channels or they don't have any at all. So you never would have considered that as a cable provider. You can go to anybody who brings internet to your door. You also want to reject all of their equipment. You want to use your own equipment. I'll talk more about that. There's a reason you don't want their junk. And an issue that came up town, it's coming up more and more these days, and it came up with a town that I gave a presentation to a couple of weeks ago. They were about to be, Comcast was about to enforce the data cap for how much data you're allowed to pull down under the basic terms. It is not a problem for most houses. The data cap is typically 1,000 megabytes, which is 1 terabyte, which is one heck of a lot of data. And we'll talk about how much data that is. Most houses will not get anywhere near that cap. So you don't need to worry too much about a data cap. The people who complain about it are generally people who are using the system and trying to use a residential connection as a commercial one and using a ton of data. So generally, you don't need to worry about it. So the whole issue of speed, the whole issue of an internet speed is grossly oversold. It's like selling everybody a Ferrari to drive to the grocery store. Low-end service now, in 2016-17, I was actually talking about mid-tier services. Now, there are very, very few services that even go as slow as 25 megabits. But you can probably go with the lowest, slowest, cheapest, most economical service they offer. You don't need to pay one dime for anything faster at all. So it's a good time to replace your service. Go to whoever has the best price on this. You don't necessarily need to stay with your cable company and go down to their broadband. That may not be the best price. You may have somebody else who has a slower, cheaper service that is just as good. You do want to use a good router and firewall. You want that front end that brings their service into you. The better quality that is, the better your service will be. And what they often give you or rent you is junk. You don't want it. So there's some speeds over there on the right that gives you an idea. Here's why speed is overrated. There's two measures. Like when you're talking about video, there's two measures of how the data is used. One is the data speed you need to maintain image quality. how fast the data has to come in to feed an HDTV. And the other is how much data does it use over time, and they're only kind of loosely related because video varies. If you monitor at a technical level, video varies greatly in the amount of data that's coming in. If there's a big, busy, bright scene that's changing a lot, it uses a lot. You have to have a lot of data come in to make that feed it. But if you have a fairly steady scene of two people talking, the data stream gets very small. But the total data averages out to a certain amount. That's what you're concerned about. So regular video only needs about 2 megabits per second, and it runs about 1 gigabit per hour. So that's 1,000 hours of standard video under a data cap. 2 megabits means there is no service too slow to bring that in. You can even go to the really, some small towns have some very, very old services that only have about 3 to 6 megabits per second. It's more than fast enough to watch 2 or 3 standard videos. HD needs about 6 megabits per second, and it eats about 3 gigs per hour. So that's 330 hours of HDTV under a data cap. Most people are not going to get anywhere near that. 6 megabits. If you have a 25 megabit service, that means 4 people can be watching HD at the same time under the data bandwidth you have. You don't need anything faster to bring it in. It wouldn't use it. Even if you go to 4K, which is increasingly popular, it's about 14 megabits per second, which means that 2 people can be watching 4K under a 25 megabit system, and it is about 7 gigabits an hour. So you would, if 2 of you watched a lot of 4K, or if you have 3 people who might be watching 4K, you might actually be getting up close to your data cap or exceeding. But there's ways to minimize that. If you're all watching at the same time, they all tend to slow down just a little bit. The quality goes down just a little bit. It's very adaptable. So you wouldn't lose it, and you wouldn't necessarily exceed your data limits. Any of you who have gamers, children, friends, families, I'm a gamer, even though I'm far from being a kid. Gamers will insist and scream and pound the thing that they need super, super, super fast internet. No, they don't. Games don't use much internet bandwidth. Games usually use about 1 megabit per second at the maximum. And the reason is, it's not video. When there's some enormous battle going on and there's 50 characters and there's things flying and all things going on and you're racing around a track, it's not sending that as video. The computer itself is doing all of that. And all it's doing, if it's an online game where you're communicating with other players, it's sending a very, very thin, tiny data stream to tell the other systems what it's doing. Move the character here, do this, hit him with this. It's a very, very small. As long as it's a reliable connection, the game will run just fine. The reason gamers like lots and lots of speed is so they can download new games. They want to be able to download a gigantic new game in 5 minutes and start playing it. I like to download new games. I just allow it just 20 minutes to do it, and I don't pay a fortune for my internet as a result. So there's the argument for when your kids are throwing themselves on the floor and saying, "Oh, we have to have a 300 megabit cable." No, they don't. You can give it to them if you want, but you don't have to. And web surfing is very, very intermittent. Web surfing hardly uses any bandwidth at all. You click and a page comes down, you click and a page comes down, and in between, nothing is happening whatsoever. The only thing on the web that eats a lot of space and time is if you're watching video. And that's the one exception. If you watch some things on YouTube and on other specialized services, sometimes those video services use much, much higher data rates for partly because they're sloppy or partly because they're sending very, very high quality data. And if you're watching a ton of stuff on something like YouTube, you may eat more data than you actually think you are. There's ways to monitor if you want to. But do the math. 1 terabyte of data, that data cap, is 330 hours of HDTV. That means around 11 hours a day all month. That means 5 hours a day for 2 people all month. You're not likely to get anywhere near that. So unless you're doing something where you use a tremendous amount of data, you simply do not need the higher speed. Don't pay for it. And as far as buying your own internet gear, you do need somebody needs the technical knowledge to be able to select it, set it up, configure it, to do it. You can pay somebody to do it, like so you can get your 13-year-old nephew or neighbor to come do it for you. But by buying your own equipment, you stop paying rental on it. And this is cheap equipment. Up there in the upper right, that's the modem that most cable companies use. It's been used for about 15 years. It was originally designed by Motorola. It's nearly a universal device. You do have to get ones that are compatible with them, but that's the one they usually use. It is about a $40 item. Actually, it's a little more expensive now. They're about 50 or 60 if you buy them new. You can buy refurbished ones for $25 or $30. They are about as reliable as an engine block. They will tell you, oh, if you get your own, we can't service you, we can't help you. You don't need to. I'm using one here in Colorado that was in my scrap box. It is limited to about 112 megabits. I'm getting 90 because that's the lowest floor that they do, and it's been working for over 10 years. There is no reason to pay them 3, 4, 5 times the cost of the device every year for this supposed support. And typically, they don't even give you one that good. They give you complete junk that they got very, very cheap. So when it breaks, you're without service for a couple of days, but they very nicely bring you a free one. So buy your own modem, if nothing else. Buy your own router, which is the part that actually takes those signals and turns them into your internal network. Because the router is also what keeps invaders out. That's where people outside your network can't get through a router firewall to your systems. Well, a lot of the equipment that cable companies give have a backdoor, a trapdoor, an administrative password. They can get through it into the computer on your desk. They won't as a company, but think about it. There are law enforcement and other issues where they may, maybe they have a warrant, maybe they have some reason to snoop on you. If you have your own equipment and your own passwords, they can't do it. So it's worth it on a personal privacy level to have your own equipment, not equipment that they have control over. And then Wi-Fi, having your own Wi-Fi devices means you probably have better quality, more power, and you are able to configure it to keep people from stealing your signal next door. And Comcast, I don't know if they do this anymore. They did it for a while, where every Comcast Wi-Fi unit that was in someone's house was available to anyone driving by. It was in theory, it was firewalled from your stuff. All they were doing was using your wireless signal to connect to the Comcast network. But frankly, I don't want anybody on my system. I don't want to share my connectivity. I don't care if Comcast is paying for it or not. So if you have your own Wi-Fi device, you can keep everybody out. It's worth having all your own gear, even if it's something of a hassle to get it for you. So let's go live to the internet again and back over to our friend, the FCC channel. Do I have it? Right. This is one of the very few services that does try to integrate all the broadband information. And again, I'll enter your zip code, which I think I already entered once. And this will bring up everybody in your area. This is all baloney, by the way. The information comes back in fraction of a second, but they make it look like they're looking it up for you. So your internet providers are, you have Optimum Cable. You could stay with them. Their prices are reasonable. You can go look at their packages. You also have the choice of going with Frontier. Frontier is over most of Connecticut and most of the Northeast now. What they do is they repurpose the old Mobile copper, the 2 wires that come to every house built until the last couple of years. And originally, it's a service called DSL or ADSL. And originally, it was limited to very low speeds. About when I first had it, about probably close to 20 years ago, it was very high speed for the time, but it was about 3 megabits. And if you were lucky, you could get 5 megabits. They now go up to 115 megabits. It's very, very sensitive to distance. Your house has to be very, very close to one of the head ends. It's measured in wire feet, and the maximum it can go is about 14,000 wire feet, which means you have to be within a couple of miles of each head end to get any kind of speed. The closer you are, the faster it is. It's a very, very improved technology. They're worth looking into because it's an alternate broadband provider that they have very high speeds. They can be very inexpensive. The one problem is their modem, their equipment is much more specialized. It's what I had here when I came to Colorado. I went with the local DSL provider. They were the cheapest, and I looked into buying a modem. The modem was about $250, which is about 2.5 years of their rental cost. So you lose that ability unless you happen to be able to find one cheap. You will have to stay with their equipment. It's actually cheaper to rent their equipment than to buy it. Cable does have the advantage that you can buy the very, very cheap equipment and get by without paying rental. So you've got Frontier, you've got Optimum. There are a couple of satellite providers. Unless you completely know what you're doing and are making an informed choice, I generally would not go with the satellite providers. They are better for places like Tolland, where there isn't a lot of good wiring infrastructure, and you may have a house that is simply nowhere near cable wiring or anything else. But you do have two choices, Frontier and Optimum, and they're worth looking into. They're worth comparing, worth playing against each other a little bit. So let's go ahead and back to the presentation here. We're trying to find, there it is. And so basically now I assume you have an OTA antenna and you're getting all kinds of wonderful channels from that. You have really great internet connectivity, whether you have it, whether you get it, whether you change what you have. So let's talk about streaming. There are a couple of different types of streaming device, and this is the link between the internet and your screen. And fortunately, it's a very simple technology. You need one device per viewer. Some of you might remember the old days when you put in a very expensive video stack, you put in a very expensive amplifier and a $500 DVD player and things like that. And then to save money, you ran it so that you could use that stack all over your house. So you could go up to the bedroom and watch on TV. You'd be watching the DVD would actually be playing in the living room, but it would run on your bedroom TV or whatever. No longer need to do that. Streaming devices are completely independent. They're very, very cheap. All they have to have is an internet connection. The one upstairs, the one in your living room, the one in your kid's room, the one that you are carrying around on a tablet, they all operate totally independently. They have no idea the other ones exist. It isn't a matter of trying to make them coordinate or talk to each other. They run completely independently. They connect the internet to the TV you're watching. So you need one independent device for every viewer. Again, it can be a computer, a tablet, or a smartphone. Like I said, for a while I would watch some TV in the living room, then I'd go to bed with a tablet and watch it. I don't do that anymore. I go back and went back to reading. The kind of an in-between solution is you can use any small device with an HDMI port and connect it to a TV. That's pretty much obsolete now, but at the time we were living in Connecticut, there was one program we liked to watch. It only was available on the internet. So we used a tablet and connected the tablet to the TV to watch it. It's a kind of in-between technology. It doesn't really apply anymore, but it's available if you can't find any other solution. Then there's streaming that's built into a smart TV. Most disc players, if you bought a disc player anytime in the last 10 years, it probably has at least some streaming built in. If you have any of the newer game consoles, those have streaming built in. It's not usually very good. It's free. You've got it. You can go right from here and go in there and turn that on and configure it and start playing with streaming without even having to go buy a streaming box tomorrow. So it's free, but generally they're kind of clunky. The menus are hard to use. The apps aren't updated. If you have a disc player that's more than 4 or 5 years old, some of the apps simply may not work because they haven't been updated. So it's a good and bad thing, but it is a way to kind of sample what's out there without spending any money or waiting until you can get a box. So a streaming appliance, a box that does nothing else but streaming, is the way to do it. They're very cheap and they make it as simple and brainless and easy as cable itself. So here's the basics of how a streaming box connects. So that's my own brand, Streaming Extreme Box. Basically, internet comes in. Like I said, wire it if you can. If you can get a wire to it, you'll have a much better experience. But nearly all of them do Wi-Fi as well, and Wi-Fi is very reliable, just not reliable enough for me. A remote is used to control it, of course, and you can integrate that. I have an inexpensive Logitech all-in-one remote that it integrated with very well. They're very small. That's what the ruler is doing here. The boxes tend to only be maybe 5 or 6 inches across. They're very tiny. They're not. You don't have to make a lot of room for them. I have mine almost invisibly perched on a shelf under the TV. But connecting is basically easy. Internet goes in, and what comes out is one cable. You connect one cable to the HDMI port on the box. You connect the HDMI cable to your TV, and you are done technically. The better ones, like I have the highest end of this maker, and I'll talk about it in a minute. It has 4 whole connections. One connection is for power because it uses a wall wart to power it. Uses very little power. One is Ethernet for the internet to connect in, and I do use that because for the reliability. One is HDMI, which goes out to the TV. And then if you're lucky, if you get one of the better boxes, they have a USB port. And the nice thing about that is you can plug in a thumb drive with video or audio on it and play it very, very easily. Like a few months ago, my daughter came over and she had all the files from a 3D sonogram for pregnancy. And it was just very easy. We plugged that in and sat and looked at, I could look at 3D pictures of my forthcoming granddaughter who's here now. It's a nice thing to have. You don't have to, but that's how simple these boxes are. Anyone who can basically, plug in a phone for charging can do the technical setup on these. They are usually what there is a small computer. They usually run Android. A few brands use other things, but they're mostly it's like a small Android phone with no screen, and it works the same way. You put apps on it, put one app for each channel. That's how it works. Nearly all of them do HD. An increasing number of the slightly better ones will do 4K. Some of them do very, very high-end 4K with the advanced features like HDR and UHD. So the video is virtually unlimited in quality, depending on what you buy. You'll see a lot of references to speed when you go out there into the world. You will find and read more on this. You'll find arguments about this one's faster than the other. It has nothing to do with the video. Video is video. What they're talking about is how fast the menus work. That you click a button and things happen very fast. Apps start very fast. It really doesn't matter. I have one that's almost 10 years old. My son there in Tolland uses it. And it is continually updated. It's a little slower than my newer one. You click a button and it takes just a moment for something to happen. That's the only downside. Don't worry about it. And a question that came up, actually, something I'd never been asked until a session maybe a couple of weeks ago, was how much does it cost per month? And the great thing about streaming devices is they are 100% down, 0% for life. There are no recurring costs to use them, other than as long as you have an internet connection, which you're obviously paying for, there is no charge to keep using these devices. You pay for premium services, you pay for the internet service, but there is no TiVo or DVO or DVR or cable box or cable company charge. They're free once you own them. So that's the other big advantage to them. I see a question here I'm going to get to. Probably the premier device is Roku. They more or less originated the whole idea of a neat little box that was easy to use. They've evolved many times in the last, it's probably been 10 or 12 years now. There's lots and lots of models out there. As I said, the older ones work fine. If you have a chance to get one from a friend, a family member, pick one up cheap. As long as it works, so basically if you can plug it in and establish that it works, it will work almost certainly well enough to continue using. Like I said, it may be a little slower. It may not do anything beyond HD, but the apps and the software are still continuously updated, which a lot of smart TVs aren't. After a couple of years, Samsung and Vizio and LG and stuff simply stop updating those, and the smart hub in your TV no longer works. So smart TVs are a very poor choice as a smart TV. Only buy TVs as a good TV. Smart features are not the reason to buy them. But Roku has the widest availability of apps. Everybody has an app for them, with very few exceptions. They are the Switzerland of streaming. They're not tied to any other commercial base, so there's no corporate wars going on. There's no competitiveness going on. They have started to move into their own channels and things, but it hasn't changed the fact that basically everyone has an app for Roku because they are neutral. I recommend, basically, I should stop right here and just say, buy Roku. Don't even look at anything else. I will talk about a few others. But really, if you're going to go out and buy a streaming device, buy a Roku, simply because nothing else even comes close in many ways that are not obvious. There are two kinds of streaming devices, basically. One is a stick. It looks like a great big thumb drive, and you plug it into the HDMI port on the TV, and away you go. The nice thing about them is, first of all, they're a little cheaper usually. They only work on Wi-Fi. They don't usually have any kind of internet connection, but they're portable. You can plug it into your living room TV and watch it. You can take it upstairs and plug it into your upstairs TV. You can take it over to your mother-in-law's house. You can take it to a friend's house. You can take it to your vacation house. And basically anywhere you have an internet connection to feed it, it will work. Big with college students, they can watch, they can plug it in, watch something in their dorm room, take it down, plug it into the common room TV, take it over to a friend's house. Very, very portable. You can stick the whole thing in your pocket, and your account, your channels, everything goes with you wherever you plug it in. They're a little inconvenient as a fixed device. They don't work quite as well as the boxes. So if you're going to buy one for your living room, buy a box. You lose the portability, but generally they're faster and more stable, have better video. They go to 4K usually. They're only a little more expensive, but the new ones are very, very fast. Everything happens as fast as clicking buttons on a computer. It's very nice stuff. So the Roku runs the most expensive model, the Ultra, runs about $100, and it's worth it. Like I said, this is a device you will have for a long time. It is continually updated. They're very reliable. It will not age out. It is one of the very few things, even speaking as a consumer advocate, it's something worth spending a little more money on than you might think at first. If you buy a very cheap one, you may end up replacing it a little later. For instance, you may buy one that doesn't have 4K. If you buy a 4K TV next year, you're going to want to go out and buy a 4K streaming box. So you may as well buy a little better. And there is an app for it. You can control it with your phone. There are apps you can download so that you don't even need a remote. You can do everything, including searching for programs and stuff on something very comfortable like your phone or your tablet, and then control it. I recommend Roku highly. The other big competitor, of course, is Amazon's device, Fire TV, which is similar in virtually every way. It's they have a stick, they have a box. They do have a few things that I don't think anybody else has yet. They do have. You can see they have a game controller. They actually have more sophisticated games that use more than 2 buttons on the remote. They do have a DVR that will record over-the-air TV. That is actually something that's still kind of difficult to do on streaming. If you have any kind of live feed on streaming, it's a little bit difficult to record it. Amazon does provide it. The problem is it's locked to the Amazon universe. It's an extension of Amazon into your house, like having an Echo or a Dot or Alexa. I'm not really fond of that. They do have corporate conflicts. Famously, they didn't have Netflix for a long time. Now it's odd how often the Netflix app goes out of date or doesn't work for a few days or isn't updated properly and stuff. There's a lot of that corporate friction because they want you to use their services, not Netflix or Hulu or other things. So that's kind of the big thing against buying Amazon. If you have, if you're familiar with all of their environment, you may want to buy one. I can't say not to, but honestly, you're better off buying a Roku because it's the same device, but it doesn't have these limitations. Don't buy an aftermarket one. Don't buy one that somebody is selling as a modified or improved or upgraded device. I won't go into a long technical thing. There is an app called Kodi that was originally developed to allow the kind of multi-channel tuning that is now built into them. You could put that app in, and then you put little plugins that let you get each channel. Well, it wasn't hard to write little plugins that got around things like actually paying for anything. And you will see these, but you'll see Amazon Fire Sticks. They're called loaded. They may be outright and say they're hacked. They may outright say they're underground. What they've done is they've loaded it with these frankly illegal programs that allow you to get Amazon or get Netflix and ESPN and the sports channels and HBO free. There's 2 problems. That one, they don't work very long because all of these services keep changing their game, and the hack stuff doesn't work very long. You're also plugged into a network. They know you're there. People are prosecuted for using them. They occasionally do go out and round up a handful of people who are using hacked Kodi apps and prosecute them. You just pour encourager les autres. That's just to make an example. So it's not really a very good deal. Basically, don't buy anything. If you're going to buy an Amazon device, buy it from Amazon, not from any second seller. Apple. Apple has been trying to build a presence in the TV world for a long time, and they have failed repeatedly for reasons that probably aren't worth discussing. The newest one is Apple TV. I don't recommend it unless you are already an Apple aficionado. You already have a very large Apple ecosystem. It will integrate and play very well with that system. If you have iPads, if you have MacBooks, if you have their home devices and stuff, it will fit in very, very seamlessly. The problem is it doesn't fit in very well with any other system. It is a little on the expensive side. It's about $200. And they are rather selective about the content. You may want the All Gilligan's Island channel. They won't provide it. They curate your experience. That's one of the advantages and drawbacks of Apple is very, very intent on providing only the very best to their customers. And that's a good thing, unless you maybe want something a little more. Don't confuse it with Apple TV Plus. You've probably read about this a lot in the news. Apple TV Plus is an open service. It will run on any of the other devices. There is a Roku app for it. There is an Amazon app for it. There's other that you can get it as an app on your devices. The Apple TV, the box, and Apple TV Plus, the service, are two completely different things. Apple TV Plus is a little on the pricey side. It is very selective and curated in its content. Famously, they swept up all of the Charlie Brown specials. If you want to watch Charlie Brown Thanksgiving, the only place you can watch it right now is on Apple TV Plus. But again, basically, it's very fine stuff. Apple makes very good stuff, but it is kind of it's like everything else. It's kind of a closed, separated, controlled little world. It's not the best choice unless you're already a very, very dedicated Apple user. I'm back to Roku. Buy Roku. Don't buy one of these. This is kind of a non-issue since you guys don't have Comcast there. Comcast is giving these boxes away. I have Comcast and I get 3 emails a week telling me, please, please, please let us send you our free streaming box. It is completely locked to the Xfinity world. It is basically their cable box in a different form. It is literally a step backwards from cutting the cord. It's simply allowing them to charge you cable prices and practices and everything using a streaming box. So if you have homes elsewhere, if you have family, if you have friends who have Comcast, don't let them take a flex box. Throw it away. It's worse than garbage. It is a step backwards. Buy them a Roku for Christmas. And there are others. There's not too many out there. I'll just very quickly. There is a device called the Google Chromecast. It is you'll see it discussed along with these. It's actually a somewhat different device. It doesn't. There are some newer models that are different, but in general, it does not work the same way. You plug it into a TV and what it is, it allows you to use things like your phone or your tablet to do the streaming. You cast the signal to the TV using this. You have a tablet, you call up YouTube, you're watching a video, you tap the cast button and it throws it over to this device so that it shows on your TV. So it's sort of a more passive device. I think there are some newer ones that have functionality built in, but generally it doesn't have any streaming functionality of its own. It's only sort of a wireless connection system. It's a solution that will work for some people if you're technologically sophisticated enough to understand how to use it, but don't misunderstand that it's some kind of competitor to the rest of them. It's a somewhat different device. The other one you want to avoid is any generic brand name. If you're going to buy anything at all, buy one of the brand name ones. Buy a Roku, buy a Fire Stick, buy even an Apple. Do not buy generic brand names. Do not buy brand names you never heard of, and do not buy this one at Walmart for $19.95. These are very, very cheap. There was something like with the loaded Fire Sticks. There was a whole sub-industry of college students. They buy a gross of these for $5 a piece and load it with all their cracked stuff and sell them. They'd sell them in the local Penny Saver or Craigslist, where it is, free TV forever for $49.95. And they make a fortune on them. And unfortunately, the systems would stop working very quickly because the apps were detected and blocked by the providers. You really aren't saving any money. Like I said, this one I think is sold by Walmart for $19.95. It's $20 thrown away. Go spend $40 on a Roku. Just avoid anything from any secondary seller or from any kind of unknown, especially if they're hyping it as free TV, because there's probably a scam involved or it's junk. Buy one of the brand name ones. And real quick, this is anything in red here is my consumer thing. Don't buy expensive cables. If you're going to reconfigure your TV and your network, don't buy expensive cables. Don't buy cables from any audio, video, electronics store. The cables sold at Best Buy are marked up on the order of 1,000%. They pay $1 to $2 for them. They sell them for $20 to $30. You go in and get a good deal on a TV, and then you get absolutely ripped off because they sell you 5 cables to go with it. I won't go into the whole thing. I can talk about it in Q&A if anybody wants to argue with me. Generally, if you need cables, go to Amazon. The Amazon Basics line is very inexpensive and they're very good quality, and you can get any length, any set of connections you want. That's just a side thing. Cables are like internet speed. They're horribly oversold. Okay, so now I'm assuming you have OTA TV. I'm assuming you have a great internet connection, a great package. Um, and I'm assuming you have a streaming device that is up and running and you're staring at a menu and trying to figure out what to do with it. Very easy. All the programs on a streaming device, basically there's one app per channel. You go to the list, you find the ones you want, you install them, you install only the ones you want, but far better than the cable model where regardless whether you want them or not, you have 500 channels that you have to go in and carefully flag as the ones you want to show up as your favorites. You only install the ones you want. You only install Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, maybe Pluto TV, whatever, and you can delete all the rest of them. So you have a very simple interface. Um, but it changes a lot. When I was giving this talk in 2016-17, I had to update it every single week, and there were times that I would do a major update, and I would go to like a second presentation, and I would have to say, "Oh, wait a minute, this isn't true anymore because it changed yesterday." It's it's there's no way I could talk about all the content anymore, and so I stopped. Like I cut most of it out. I cut it down to a generic list. The basic thing is once you get to the point where you're sitting there looking at a streaming menu, you can go find your own. And that's really all I'm going to talk about is how to find stuff that suits you. The changes are constant. Like, for instance, there was one thing, those of you who are into film know what the Criterion collection is. It's a very, very high quality DVDs and remastering of classic films. I think they've got about 1,500 of them now. And generally, if you want to buy a copy of Casablanca, you want the Criterion version. If you want to buy a copy of Brazil, you want the Criterion one. It's the best image. It's all restored. It's got all the good stuff. Anyway, Criterion had a streaming channel, and for a while, it was just a back end on Hulu. If you had Hulu at a very reasonable rate, you had access to the whole Criterion collection. Then it up and moved, and it was on HBO. Now, as far as I know, it's on its own channel that you have to pay for. That kind of shifting of content is continuous. And you may have been reading in the last year how basically Disney Plus, Apple TV Plus, and HBO Max sucked up tons and tons of content that had been kind of distributed. Like there were programs that were on Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Hulu, and now they're all gone. They were all gathered up. Instead of being filler, they're now exclusively on HBO Max or exclusively on Disney Plus. And we're kind of moving backwards from the open thing where everything is out there to now they're moving back to where everything is going behind paywalls again. It's moved backwards. But those changes are constant. There's no way to keep up with them except by looking. The cable package model is the big change. This had started to happen when I last gave this talk, and now it's become where you subscribe to one service that brings you 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 channels, and you pay for them. You're back to paying a lot of money for a whole bunch of channels so that you can get Oxygen or AMC, and it really was a step back from the consumer hat part of me really liked the fact that it was becoming cafeteria. You could pick channels one at a time. Some were free, some were very inexpensive, some came as a small package, but you could pay granularly. You could pay only what you wanted to pay for. Now, nearly all the mid-tier channels are only available through one of these packages. So if you like a bunch of the cable channels, you're going to have to subscribe to Sling or YouTube TV or Hulu TV and pay 30 or 40 or $50 a month for this giant package of channels so that you can have the three you want. Big step backwards. The advantage is it does bring a lot of live streaming channels where they're not pre-recorded. They are basically like cable. You tune in at a particular time to watch something, which can be good, can be bad. So anyway, let's move along. A streaming channel, I'll skim over this pretty much. A streaming channel is not actually a channel like a TV channel. It's more like a catalog. Probably most of you have used something like Netflix. You subscribe to that channel, and when you go into it, you have access to their whole catalog. They've reduced it quite a bit, but I think they have probably 50,000 programs. You pick what you want to watch from within that, and that's what's called a channel. It's actually more like a catalog service or a library. You install each app for each service you want, or delete it if you don't want it anymore. There are very few of the continuous feed or live stream channels that are just kind of out there in the wild. They only tend to come with the cable packages. So generally, when you add individual apps, it's all the catalog style, where you go in and you pick and choose what you want to watch, and then you can watch at your own pace. There are four basic types of streaming provider. One is the monthly flat fee, the subscription guys. Netflix, you pay them a flat between about $14 and $20, and you have access to everything they have. It's all you can eat. You can watch 24/7, 365 if you like. You pick and choose anything they have. There's no additional charges for anything. It's that you can only watch one thing at a time. Actually, they do have packages where multiple viewers can watch at the same time, so you don't have to have a separate subscription for each person. Their biggest package is 4 viewers at a time, and they have 2 viewers, and then they have one. The other kind is the pay-per-view catalog type guys, where basically you go in with the catalog, anything you want to watch, you pay for. Vudu's the big gorilla there. They have virtually every movie ever released. They have nearly every television program ever released up through the immediately prior season, and you simply pay for what you want to watch. They do have a free tier now that's supported by advertising, but in general, basically, if you go on to Vudu and you want to watch a movie, you pay $2 or $3 or $5 for it. If you want to watch a TV program, it's typically $2 an episode or about $20 a season. Not a very good bargain unless it's something you want to keep. But that's all they have. Basically, they don't have anything. They don't generally give you anything for free. You go in and you pay for whatever you want to watch. The increasingly large ones are the monthly subscription ones like HBO. HBO used to have basically only the very small amount of HBO programs. Now they've expanded. They've got like 3 or 4 different versions, including the HBO Max, which has not only all of everything they've ever done, but they have swept up a lot of other properties that are exclusively available there. But it's not everything. It's still kind of a limited selection. You pay a lot for it. It's about $15 a month, and it does give you access to everything HBO did, plus the stuff that they have proprietarily pulled in. But it's not a huge selection like Netflix or Hulu. Then there's the free channels. There are thousands. There's probably 10 really big ones, and then there are just uncounted thousands of smaller and smaller and smaller ones that have anywhere from the big ones like Pluto and Crackle and Popcorn stuff have, I don't know how many, 50,000. They're almost as big as Netflix. It tends to be a little junkier, but they do actually have quite a few very good, stuff you would pay good money to watch, and they have it. The price is that they put ads in. And for a while it was bad. They did exactly what you'd think. It'd be 3 minutes of movie and 2 minutes of ads, and 5 minutes of movie and 3 minutes of ads. And they discovered that drove people away. So what they do now is actually even trickier. They run very short ads. About every 10 minutes, there's about a 20-second ad. And it's not fast enough to walk away. It's not fast enough to skip over. It's not fast enough to even mute, because by the time you finish muting and unmuting it, you've missed part of the program starting again. So they've stuck in these, what Cognoscenti call blipverts, basically very short, fast ads that you're pretty much stuck with. But I actually watched some programs on that, and even as much as I did dislike commercials and stuff, I don't find them obnoxious. It's worth getting the movies for free, especially as that's where you find a lot of very obscure older movies, B movies, horror movies, old science fiction movies, old noir. It is a great resource, and it is basically completely free. Roku channels. Roku has its own lineup of channels. Almost anyone can create a channel, much like YouTube, but this is a different world. It's not as technically adept. It tends to be people who are not very good at it. I have one channel on Roku that I really enjoy. It has about 13 videos on it, and about once a year I watch 1 or 2 of them to remind me just how awful a TV station can get, or a channel can get. I'll reveal the name if anybody wants to ask. And you can have wonderful evenings just browsing through this backlist of complete craziness. It seems like every pair of 18-year-olds in the country has created their own horror movie channel. There are an endless number of Second Amendment rights channels, which I make no fun of. It's just they're all exactly the same. It's an old guy on a couch mumbling about Second Amendment stuff, and they all do about 3 videos, and then they run out of things to say. And there's dozens of them, and they're all identical except that it's a different person talking. So you can have tons and tons of fun just rummaging through these. And there's actually practical ones. A lot of the larger churches have their own Roku channel. They will record sermons. They will record, material suitable to their congregation. And it's maybe a little interest to anyone outside that, but the 100 or 200 or 500 people of that congregation have their own TV channel. It's all out there. It's all wonderful, and browsing through it can be lots and lots of fun, and it's all free. There are 4 other types of streaming channel not to forget. One, of course, is web video. All of the streaming boxes have a web browser built into them, or most of them have a web browser. All of them have YouTube. So basically, anything that is on YouTube, you can throw up on your TV. And you may or may not be aware of it. YouTube is more than cat videos and political manifestos. There are entire movies up there. There tend to be movies where the studio is long gone, and there's really nobody to enforce a copyright. I get surprised that I have discussed on movie things saying, gee, I wish I could find this really old obscure movie. And somebody says, oh, well, it's on YouTube. And there it is, all hour and a half of it. Just some very old, obscure Donald Sutherland movie from 1970 that nobody ever bothered to put on video, and the studio doesn't care about it anymore. So there it is. So YouTube, anything you anything you know of being on YouTube, you can throw up on your TV. Cable lock channels, I'll skim over. When the big TV channels got into streaming, the way they did it was they put a channel up that had some of their content on it that you can only get to if you could prove that you were paying for them on cable. That is, you could watch the ESPN channel if you got a note from your cable company, basically a code that said you were paying for ESPN. So not really very useful, except that it put a lot of things like in ESPN's case, older games or games of the week and stuff up on streaming. It's a declining segment. You won't see it much, but people will go, oh, look, it's the ESPN app. And you go to put it on, and it turns out that you have to have a code from your cable company to be able to watch it. So just be alert on that. And of course, OTA. You guys have absolutely fabulous OTA opportunities. If you don't put up an antenna tomorrow, you're losing out. And then there are the streaming cable packages. Sling TV, Direct TV. I've got a slide on this that's coming up. It's another option if you really want all of that mid-tier cable stuff and you can't get it any other way. You can get it now. You will pay for it. So finding streaming sources is actually trivial. You simply look through the menus. If you have a Roku, if you have a Fire Stick, if you have an Apple, all you do is look through. There's something called a channel store or a channel search. Simply search through it. Like any other catalog, or if any other resource, if somebody says, oh, this obscure small channel is on Roku, you can search specifically for that. You just add the app to your thing. I don't know what the limit on apps is. I know some people have hit the memory limit, but it's a lot. It's like 150 channels. So there's no you put as many as you want on there. I tend to weed mine a lot. I'll put one on, I don't like it, and I'll take it back off. But you can easily put up the dozen or so that you want within a few minutes of streaming. That's where you find them. Sometimes you can find them as browser plugins. There are some like most of the major channels will also allow you to watch on the web. CW is big on that. You can watch all of their programs on it. Most of the major networks also have apps you can watch on that. But that's not really the same thing as streaming. You're coming at it from a direction. You don't generally find them just sort of out in the wild. You don't go to somebody's website and say, hey, look, here's a streaming app, download this thing. They're usually tied to a device. It's something like getting into the Apple Play catalog or the Google Play app. So it's been added and vetted and it's available with the device itself. You don't have to go find an application and somehow get it to the box. It doesn't really work that way. Libraries also now have gotten into streaming. I'm not sure what Darien has, but there are channels that are only available to library patrons. And the way they work is the libraries as a whole pay for them, and then you go and you find when one is called Canopy, one is called Hoopla. You go to their website and you find if your library is listed, and you enter your library card number, and that gives you an authorization code to put it on your thing. And they have wonderful stuff. Tends to be documentaries, somewhat more obscure movies, all kinds of stuff. It's worth adding. I'm not sure what Darien offers, but it's worth adding to the list because there's often really great stuff on there, and it's free. The way to find stuff, it was a little tougher in the beginning. You kind of had to know, or follow the forums, or read articles and just kind of wander around in the wilderness. Now there's a service called Just Watch, and it is both justwatch.com, which is a website you can come on a browser. There's also a Just Watch app that will run on any device. It'll run on Android or on Apple devices, and it is the Google of streaming. It knows. I have flummoxed it very few times. It has, if it's on streaming, it will tell you where to find it. It will rank it by free and subscription and pay-per-view and the other things. You can find very obscure stuff. My favorite story is about the time I was giving the presentations live. Someone on a channel, that her daughter desperately needed to find this incredibly obscure South African movie for a report, and nobody knew where it was. Nobody could find it. Nobody had a copy. I went on to the early version of Just Watch and found it on what was then a very, very obscure channel, and said, well, you know, put Pluto TV on your streaming device. It's on there, and that's the level of very, very obscure stuff that you can find. It's the resource. It's the TV guide. It's the Google. It's the central thing of turning. It is a commercial service. They will push certain things on you, but so is Google. The other fun thing is Roku's channel store. If you go, you can go to the web. You go to Roku.com. I have the actual URL is on the list coming up here, and you can simply browse through all of their channels and look at the previews of them just to get an idea of what's out there. Also on the box itself, you can simply go through page after page after page of everything from HBO down to, you know, Joe's Second Amendment rights channel. There's just tons and tons of stuff. That's how you find everything that you may not have heard of. So it's very easy to find the sources once you have the device up and going. And just a real quick summary. I spent a lot of time on each of these. Don't need to anymore. The basic providers are, if you're for movies, of course, are Netflix, Vudu, and then Amazon. If you don't have Prime, you can get everything, but you will pay for it. If you have Prime, a huge amount of it becomes no further cost. Prime is still pretty much a bargain if you use these services. The TV shows, Hulu was the big gorilla. That's how they came into it. They were the ones who brought TV to the internet, streaming. For a long time, they were free, driven by ads, and they swept up all the TV shows that didn't have any second run. They went to pay only, and now they have virtually every TV program that runs. Basically, if you are subscribed to Hulu, most TV programs, if it runs on Wednesday night, you can watch it starting on Thursday night. We watched many programs we watched them basically one day delayed, and they typically keep the entire season around for you to watch it. Hulu's if you're looking for television, looking for programs, they now have movies and they have their own original programming as well, but they are the big gorilla of TV on the internet. Netflix also has channel. What Netflix tends to have is they have virtually every television program there is up through the end of the prior season. They don't get the new episodes until the season is done, and then they tend to get the season just as the next season is starting in September or October. As season 8 is starting, they get season 7. Amazon, same thing, very similar to both those. And Vudu also has virtually every television program, but it's completely pay. So you will. The good thing is you will own it forever. If you really, really want to own Game of Thrones, I think they have it. You can go pay $30 a season for it, and you have it absolutely forever in digital form. Then there's the premium providers. HBO, of course, is the big gorilla there. They have fragmented into several things. If you're going to go with any of them, what you want is HBO Max. I subscribed through a free trial through Amazon Prime. Subsumes a lot of these channels. You can subscribe to them as sort of plugins to like I have a very obscure one called IMDb TV. IMDb is, of course, the online resource about movies and stuff. They have their own TV channel now, and they swept up a lot of older TV programs. And I simply enabled the IMDb TV through Amazon Prime. This simply became part of my channel lineup. HBO, I got it through Amazon Prime, and I was very pleased with it. Let my son and I watch a couple things that we had wanted to watch on HBO, and I even paid for the first month. But it turned out it wasn't the same thing as HBO Max. When I wanted to watch Wonder Woman 1984, it wasn't part of that HBO's lineup, even though it was the same price. It was HBO. It called itself HBO Max. It wasn't the actual HBO Max service, so it didn't have everything. So if you're going to get HBO, go with HBO Max. It's the same price. Same thing. Showtime, Stars, CBS All Access, of course, is the famous example where they pulled a lot of stuff. They have programming like the new Star Trek that is only behind their paywall. And then Disney Plus, which has all the Disney stuff and also swept up a huge amount of other properties. So these are all very expensive. They run about $15 a month. It can add up very fast. You can be very selective. The way to do it is use free trials. If you want to try HBO Max, find one of the portals that is giving a 7-day free trial. Go ahead and sign up for the trial, and then do nothing but watch that for a few days. Don't sign up for it and forget about it and let it roll over into the paid thing. Spend a couple of days looking through their catalog, looking through their stuff, deciding if you want to keep it, and before it charges, cancel it, and then go on to the next one. Only have 1 or 2 of these at a time. Don't sign up for all of them at once, because you'll never find they'll all roll over into paid, and you'll be paying for them for at least a month before you sort out which ones you want. Use the free trial judiciously so that you can try them over the next maybe month or 2 months. Try all of them and only keep the ones that really suit you, and you can keep your costs down. All the major channels have channels. I believe all of the major networks have their own, so you can watch like the national feed for virtually everything they send. And also nearly every major city affiliate has their own. So you can watch the national NBC feed, which may have different programming, or you can watch the one from Hartford or New York, or the Long Island cities. So you can watch something of more local news. And they're all on there in one form or another, including PBS. PBS has a national feed. That's like it goes on and on and on. There are an incredible number of channels out there. You simply have to go look and see what's available and choose the ones you want. Talk about the cable stuff. The last of the mid-tier channels were looking at going into streaming in their own. The Oxygen app, the AMC app, the History app. Along came Sling TV, which is basically Dish Network. It was very easy for them to take their satellite feed and turn it onto the internet. DirecTV did the same thing. It's AT&T cable turned onto the internet. And then others came along. Hulu created their own cable-like channel. YouTube created their own cable-like channel, and then Comcast jumped into it. So what happens? All those midline channels that were about to go to their own channels are now all back stuck in cable packages. They're worth looking at if you really have to have those channels. They are available. There are live channels as well. I don't like the fact that we're back to basically paying a cable-like company cable-like fees to give them cable-like control over what they care to show us. So I think we kind of lost on that turn. And of course, sports. That was the big question. In 2016-17, sports were not very good. That was probably the only reason to keep cable. If you had to see every UConn game, if you had to see every Red Sox game, every Patriots game, cable was pretty much the only combination that would bring it to you. Now it's far better. There are league channels for everything, NFL and MLB. In fact, there is a rumor, I don't know what's happened to it, that NFL was actually going to stop releasing, but basically if you wanted to watch an NFL game, you will have to watch it on the NFL app. There will be no cable rights, there will be no television rights, there will be no premium rights. All NFL games will be controlled by their own channel because, of course, they're not making nearly enough money licensing all those rights out. They have to bring it in so that they can simply survive financially. I don't know what happened to that. I'm not sure if that actually came to pass or is going to, or if they changed direction again. Between the league channels and local OTH coverage, which again, great coverage that'll cover a huge amount of games, and things like Amazon Prime now has Thursday Night Football. Basically, it's spreading back out. You should be able to watch nearly all games without cable. If you can afford, if you can live with missing the odd game without going down to the local pub, you can get rid of cable on that basis now. You really couldn't a few years ago. It's gotten a lot better. It's going to get better. But yes, sports are available. And that's everything about all the streaming. Basically, you need, I'll sum up a minute, but you need good internet, you need a streaming device, you need to pick your channels, and that's all there is to it. But there are other services. If you have a phone through your cable company, it is not a phone that is tied to your local network the way Ma Bell was. There are other providers. It is simply an internet service, and there are many internet providers that provide phone service. So you can get better service for less money that is not connected to your cable. So if you're going to dump your cable package altogether, you can still have digital phone service, landline phone service from another provider. There's two different kinds. There's service-based. I recommend Vonage. They're not the cheapest, but they're an excellent provider. They have every feature. They're features that I helped develop about 20 years ago, and they've now become universal. Things like voicemail is automatically sent to you as email. It transfers it to text. and sends it to you as part of the package. I found that very, very convenient. There's also Broad Voice, who's a little cheaper. And then if you're very, very technically adept, there are places that are incredibly cheap, but you need a lot of technical expertise. They're meant more for business and industry, and you can sort of tap in as a one-line residential user. You need a lot of expertise to do it. It's not plug and play. The other ones are the gadget-based ones that you're probably familiar with. Everybody's probably seen Magic Jack ads. Magic Jack used to be free. You bought the box for $40 and plugged it in, and you had free TV, or for free telephone service forever. Well, that doesn't work anymore. The FCC got on them for not paying their share of telecom costs. So now if you buy an UMA box, which is the upscale version at about $100, or a Magic Jack for about $50, you still get a bill for $4 or $5 a month for all those fees. And that amount has been going up with all those little added service fees that they like to add in. So I really don't think much of the gadget-based ones where you buy the box and you get the service free. You're better off going with a service-based one. Vonage, Broad Voice, there's a number of others out there. But you can get real telephone service. You can transfer your number. They have every feature you ever want. Vonage in particular, like I said, I went to a web page. You can block all the calls. You can block Rachel on every number she calls. You can block the IRS threat phone calls. Very, very flexible, very easy to use, and you do not have to give it up by giving up your cable company. So, okay, it really is a lot easier than I made it sound here. Here's the whole presentation. We could have skipped this entire hour, and I could have just read this slide to you. You need good internet service, and good Wi-Fi in your house is an asset. Buy your own connection equipment. Buy a good streaming device if you don't have one. Roku. Switch to an independent phone provider if you want to keep your local stuff. You configure the device for your connection channels. The connection might be a little tricky for some of you, but the channels are easy to find. Put up an OTA antenna. I recommend it for all of you. I really do. It's you have such great service there. You're throwing away money and entertainment by not doing it. And then you watch TV, and that's really all there is to it. Everything else is just in the details. The steps to getting there are pretty quick. The one thing you can do right now, as soon as I stop talking, is you can experiment with streaming content on the device you're watching right now, on a smart TV, on a computer, on a disc player. Go ahead and do it. If you haven't looked at streaming, go ahead and go do it. It's probably in your house right now. I would recommend that you buy your own internet gear. Even if it takes a little bit of trouble and time, you will save money. You get better equipment, more privacy, and you stop paying rental. Buy a streaming appliance when you've kind of made the decision it's worth it. Roku. And then basically, once you've decided you don't need cable anymore, drop it for the best internet plan you can get from any provider. You don't have to stay with the same provider. Add a streaming device for each location. Go ahead and buy a stick for upstairs. You can move it between that and the den and your vacation house or whatever. And again, check out the OTA channels. This can save hundreds. Like I said, someone here has talked about how much their optimum is. I had a guy who one of the live things that came up to me and said he had it was in Avon somewhere where money means a little different to them, and he said he had 4 cable boxes. They had one in the living room, one in their bedroom, and then each of their kids' rooms had it. They had every single premium package, and the teaser and intro rates had long ago run out. His kids were no longer even there. They'd gone to college. They never watched anything in the bedroom. They barely watched the one living room. He was paying $450 a month to keep all of this in place. And he had come to find out how to get rid of that. And basically, by talking sense into him, I got about a month later, he went to one streaming device and had cut $400 off of his monthly bills. So if you're paying a ton of money to your cable company, it's because you're paying for this hugely inflated set of channels. And even if you go down to very basic cable to keep a few things, you can substitute everything else on a much cheaper basis. And you can, and on top of it all, you can get fewer ads. So again, that's where all this information is. All of the websites that have gone flying past and information about what to look for on them and how to look up your own information is in that top thing. There's the other ones, the FCC site. Antennas Direct is a commercial company, but they have a very, very information-packed site. If you're going to buy an antenna, they're the ones to look at because they will guide you right to exactly the right choices. and how-to videos and all kinds of. They are a commercial service, but they're very, very good at it. And then to find your streaming content, just watch, and that's the actual URL for the Roku channel store. And this always got a big laugh. I don't get the big laugh from the audience for this one, so I'll just imagine it. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer anything. I think I've answered everything that's come along in chat. Let me scan down here a little bit. Not sure anything I can ask. I'm not really sure I can provide specific brands to buy. There are so many brands and so many models within them. They change so much. It will take, you need to tap somebody who knows your situation and has the technical expertise to help you. There is an email address on my site. I'm happy to answer more questions. Like if in an hour you think of a question that is sort of general interest, I'm happy to answer it for you. I really can't be a private consultant or walk you through your own situation, but I'm happy to answer more general questions. Now that you know kind of what you're looking for, you can ask the right questions about of someone who will help you choose equipment and get it installed. Hopefully, this is actually went past one thing. These are some of the topics that I have that I weeded out of the thing. If any of these is of interest, I can move along to them. The one that I did talk about, net neutrality, it's probably one of the most important. We just went through a period where we came very close to losing it. And if you had Comcast, you would see what you had access to the network to the internet that Comcast wanted you to have. Fortunately, we seem to have gotten past, and I believe that net neutrality will be fully restored in this new administration, which is it's as important as the First Amendment. This is the one probably most people would want to see: it, how to argue with your cable company. Anybody who's called and said, "Oh gosh, my teaser rates ran out and it's too expensive," and if you spend enough time, they would give you another 3 months at teaser rates, or they would give you HBO free for a month or something. You simply don't want to do that. There's no point in trying to argue for a bargain. You're arguing with a used car salesman who's going to win. They have a playbook. They're going to run it on you. They're going to drag you out. They're going to try to wear you down. What you want is control. You want to get rid of all cable services except internet if you want to stay with them. Say no. When they tell you can't do that, say yes, you can. When they say the contract says you can't, tell them to change the contract. And what you want to do is you want to wear them down. And the final thing is they will say, okay, fine, but if you cancel the contract, there's a cancellation fee. Well, do the math. If you're bound to another 6 months or 9 months of $200 a month cable service, a $75 or $100 cancellation fee is a bargain. Go ahead and buy your way out of the contract. Set up the contract for internet only, and not only are you paying less money, you're probably not going to pay less money than you do from the very, very lowest introductory teaser rates, but you now have control. They can't change your services. They can't change the cable lineup. They can't move your channel into a tier you have to pay for. You now have, basically, you have a pure pipeline of data you can do anything with. They can't yank you around. I haven't had Comcast bother me in 10 years because all I have is internet service, and they can't Mickey Mouse that around and change channels and change the packages and change the rates. So that's what you want, is control, and basically keep arguing and do whatever it takes. The nuclear option, which is why the little icon is there, is threaten to cancel. Just say, fine, screw it, I don't need this anymore. Cancel the whole thing. I don't care what it costs. They won't let you. But that will basically put them in a mode where they will find an answer for you that's beyond the playbook, that is not based on how much they can squeeze you into or bargain you into and stuff. That's kind of the nuclear option. That's how you do it. That's how you deal with them. You sort of stand there, you plant your feet, and you get what you want. And I don't think there's really anything else but if there's any questions, let me look up the chat here real quick. If you live in an apartment, basically all you need is internet. Whatever your internet service is, typically, some apartments and condos and stuff, internet service comes with the rent. If you have that, you're good. If you have to do your own, it's the same thing. You sign up with whatever provider is available at that address. The only thing that would change is the actual modem, the modem that actually connects it all to whichever service you choose. You're basically free. You no longer care about cable limitations or service areas or anything, because anywhere you have internet, you have exactly the same services that you've set up for yourself. And the live MC, basically what's the streaming service for live services? That's mostly on the web. You will want a browser. Smart TVs a lot of times have a browser built into them. Some of the streaming boxes have it. Generally, streaming, there are NBC and CBS and ABC applications for the national things. Like I said, I had a choice. I could watch it on streaming, but I decided to go up and watch the inauguration on my big TV through OTA. Generally, live streaming for that kind of stuff, you will want to go to the web for one way or the other. Any other questions?
I think that this has been just wonderful, Jim, but it's almost 9. I did send the Cut the Cord support and information page to everyone who had the link to this program. And your email is also on there if people want to contact you.
Yep.
Terrific.
Yeah, sorry, this does run long. I really try to get through it fast and talk fast, and it's just there's so much
a lot of information.
I have yet to get the basic presentation under an hour. I'll have to talk much faster for the next ones.
No, this was great. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much to all of you.